Well, good evening and welcome everyone. I'm Sarah Whalen and I am one of the coordinators of the parent group here at ADHDKC. We're the Kansas City region's CHAD chapter. And we are excited to have Sean McCormick tonight speaking for us. And we're going to get a little bit more into him speaking in just a moment. Few things I wanted to remind everyone of is just if this is your first time joining us, we have a website, ADHDKC.org. We have so many different events, groups, all free to attend. You need to register on the website. And we are a proud member of CHAD. And CHAD has lots of different requirements, which help us all have guidelines for our chapter meetings and presentations. And one of those is to notify and remind everyone that we promote an environment of respect and inclusion. So we're going to expect that we are managing ourselves and for the good of the group and the community well-being, just kind of, doing those great human things we know we need to do, right, when we have these presentations. So without further ado, we're going to have Sean start his presentation tonight. And among other things, he is the owner of EF Specialists and a former special education teacher, and he has many, many other professional hats that he wears. And we are so honored and excited to have you here tonight, Sean, for creating a blueprint for a successful semester for high school students. Anything we can get for our high school students is so helpful.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, Kristen, as well, for inviting me to share tonight. I'm really excited to be here with everybody. I also want to thank CHAD. CHAD is such an amazing organization. I didn't go this year because I had a family event, but for the last 2 years, I've been at the national conference, and so fun to meet people and just exchange ideas. So just really, really appreciative of the place that CHAD has in my life and for all the people it brings together. It's exciting to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to contribute to the mission. So I will jump into it. I know we got an hour here or a little bit less at this point, so I want to be respectful of all your time. Time is so important. And so let's jump in. Drop in the chat box. Are you a parent, educator, both, something else, professional, speech language pathologist, teacher, doctor, passionate about ADHD strategies? Who are you? Let me know. Get it in there. Let's get it going. All right. I'm seeing a lot of parents and a patent parent with a patent. Just kidding there. So I encourage you, if you have any questions, let me know. You know what I mean? If you don't understand something, feel free to drop in the chat box. I trust Sarah and Kristen, you can interrupt me. The goal here is to help you walk away with something valuable. It's not to memorize everything I'm sharing here, but I will share before I go into it that I'm going to share a handout. I might as well just drop this in. This has all the resources I'm going to share. So for example, I'm going to talk to you about some email templates. They're all included here. So no need to write everything down unless that helps you process information, but all that is right there. So I just want to free that cognitive space so you can focus on being here, being present. 300 million. That is the number of students that have been basically reviewed in this study, Visible Learning. Anyone heard of this study, Visible Learning by John Hattie? So this study is the biggest study ever done on what works in education. And in this study, there was over 2,100 meta-analyses. I always screw up on that word, meta-analyses done, which is basically a study looking at multiple studies, over 132,000 individual studies, and 300 million students encompassed in it. And in this study, and you can Google it, if you just type in John Hattie Visible Learning, you can find the actual breakdown. They have a really beautiful, basically organizational tool where you can search by different studies and how they've impacted student or what impact they have on students. And in this study, Dr. John Hattie and his team of researchers was trying to figure out what contributes to and detracts from student achievement. And so every factor in this study was given an effect size. And the average effect size of all these factors, so there's over 250 different strategies or factors that impact student achievement, was 0.4. So Dr. Hattie and his team judged the strategy or approach based on whether it fell above or below this hinge point of 0.4 to answer the question of what works best in education. Now, this is a graphic from 2017 or 2018. where they were showing some of the highest leverage factors, right? One of them here is teacher estimates of achievement, which I'm going to get into later. It's basically, does the educator understand how to place appropriate like scaffolds or challenges in front of the student based on their learning needs, right? Number two is collective efficacy. Is the team working together towards the same goal, or are they splintered, right? My favorite one is self-reported grading, which is like an executive function skill in itself, in that when students self-evaluate how they think they did and they identify what went well, what didn't go so well, and what changes they need to make based on their self-evaluation, that has a huge impact on student achievement, right? But what's more interesting about this study to me is when you go down to the bottom of these 256 factors, guess what lands at the very bottom, the most negatively impactful factor of all? ADHD. Does this surprise anyone? It surprised me. I knew ADHD was challenging, but I didn't realize that the research so broadly pointed at it as a huge, basically negative impact factor. Now, I have a theory for why this is, and it's because ADHD, if you look at the definition in the DSM-5 about ADHD, I don't have it here, but I gave a workshop yesterday for a school district where I basically listed out the definition of ADHD. And so much of it is about being a student. It's struggles to maintain focus, may be distracted even without without an obvious distracting factor. And so because of this, kids are not taught, they're not taught how to learn. They're taught what, right? They're taught, okay, this happened 1870, or memorize this formula for the elements, but they're not taught how to learn typically. And so because of this, self-reflection skills are not usually held to a high standard, which develops metacognition. It's underutilized. And there's no common core standards for EF skills. Now, I don't know if anyone's seen the research of Dr. Adele Diamond. I wish I'd put it in here. But Dr. Adele Diamond found that executive function skills are more important and a better predictor of school success than entry-level reading or math, right? Across multiple peer-reviewed studies. But yet there's no standards for these skills. It's confusing, right? So in this workshop today, I'm going to give you some tips I've found in my career as a special educator, and then also working one-to-one with hundreds of students and teaching other people how to work with students, what works in helping develop these skills, right? First, I'm going to go through what are the unique challenges that students with ADHD are facing, which we've kind of tapped into a bit there. Then we're going to go into the practical approaches to support students with ADHD. And lastly, we'll talk about coordinating support or creating a system to support them. Hopefully by the end of this, you feel like you have a blueprint for helping high school students have a better or best semester yet. I want to set a few expectations here. Nothing is easy, right? Whatever you put into this, you're going to get out of it. So if you pay attention, if you show up, if you listen, if you engage intellectually with this, you will get a lot more out of it. If this is on in the background and you're also like listening to a podcast, it's probably going to be hard to get value from this. And I like to share this diagram because in any learning process, there's what's called the dip, right? So we have the initial enthusiasm, then we have the valley of despair where the learning happens, and then we get the results, but we have to go through the dip. So just keep that in mind when you're feeling a little distracted. I hope you can refocus. A little bit about me. I'm a former public school special educator. I taught in New York, in Buffalo, as well as California. I founded EF Specialists and co-founded Upskill Specialists, which is an adult executive function coaching business. And then I also speak and train as the founder of the Executive Function Coaching Academy. This is me in my second special ed classroom, and this was a really fascinating experience. I moved back to California and I started work. I got this job in my former high school where I went to high school in my former district. It was called a counseling enriched classroom. And this was this classroom had kids coming back from residential treatment programs. So kids with a lot of really significant challenges, often with multiple different types of special needs. And I learned so much in my experience in this classroom because I realized no matter how much I wanted a student to do something, it wouldn't really move the needle. I had to figure out a way to help them feel completely invested and bought. And so during this process, what I learned was three things. First, I learned that students want to be successful. I had to hold that core belief, even when they were appearing like they didn't want to do the work or they were fighting back or arguing. I had to hold that core belief that students want to be successful. Number two was I also had to remember that they will take action if they have a light at the end of the tunnel or something that they want to achieve or create, right? So I had to figure that out. And number three, the only way to get them to take action would be if it was small enough where it didn't overwhelm them and shoot them into their amygdala where they became totally overwhelmed, right? So keeping those three things in mind, I started helping students identify what they wanted and take tiny action each day. And through this process, I learned about executive functioning. I got very fascinated by it because it wasn't something I had learned about in my college program, wasn't something I had been taught about in school, but I realized the only way to get people to do things is to help them decide that it's in their best interest. And so as my wife and I had our first child, I started to work on the side and become a tutor. At first, I called myself an organization tutor. And then I realized, oh, I'm actually an executive function coach. My background in special ed, my passion for helping students with special needs on this is executive function coaching. This isn't organization tutoring. And so one day I got this feedback from a parent, and she said, by helping with his executive function skills, our son was able to focus more on school and stay on top of his homework. Since he was more focused on school and was able to reap the rewards of better grades, his video gaming decreased tremendously. And I share this because a lot of people think that kids with ADHD don't care, or they just need to try harder, or they just want to play video games. But it's actually that they're escaping the struggle of school because they feel so overwhelmed that they don't feel like they have another option. So they need an escape. But when they have the tools and systems in place, they don't need to play video games all the time. Maybe they'll still do it, but probably a lot less. And that's what happened with this student. I never talked to this student a single time about not playing video games or cutting back on it. I just taught him how to effectively manage school. And that in turn gave him the regulatory skills so that he didn't feel like he had to escape all the time. And those are the skills that I'm going to teach you, how to foster today. So that was part one, right? Part of part one. The other part of, sorry, and I needed to reorganize this, but let me jump forward a little bit. So the other things that have been associated with ADHD, these are from peer-reviewed studies. And if you want to check these studies out, because I want to make sure you are able to do that, if you jump over into the handout and you scroll down into research basis for presentation, I've attached all the different studies that I was referring to. So you can go back and check those out for anyone who likes to dig into the data. And I've broken them down by categories just so you can check those out. But jumping back over here. So the research has shown ADHD is associated with poor school performance both in childhood and later in life. Children with ADHD are at an increased risk of lower scores on reading and arithmetic achievement tests. And adolescents with ADHD fail more grades and perform worse on standardized achievement tests than matched controls. So it really is, I would say, like a prime imperative of the education system to address this. But until it does, we've got to take matters into our own hands and do something about it. And so I've come up with this framework called CHASE. And I feel like this encapsulates the experience of many students, especially high school students. I would say mainly middle school and high school students and some college students who haven't figured it out or got the support they need. And CHASE stands for the following. Usually they might start the semester with feeling committed. They've got that initial enthusiasm, they're in the honeymoon phase, and then hurdles start to emerge. They start to get overwhelmed, and that's when the alert goes off, right? Parents might start to email the teachers. They might start to see missing assignments popping up on Canvas, which leads to the scramble, right? This is followed by exhaustion, because once they scramble, then they end up feeling exhausted, and then the cycle repeats. Now, does this resonate with anyone? Has anyone seen a student experience this? Drop a little yes or thumbs up in the chat box if this feels familiar to you. If you've seen it before, okay, I'm seeing some yeses. This is what I've noticed working with students. And so I tried to create this model so we could think about what do we do at these different points to try to address it. So I gave you a little bit of the research. There's more there for you if you want it. Now we're going to talk about the practical approaches to supporting them. So how do we break the CHASE cycle? Well, I have 3 pillars. One is we have to support at the point of performance. 2, we've got to understand what teacher estimates of achievement are. And 3, we've got to understand the zone of proximal development. And when we understand these 3 things, then we have a better chance at really supporting these students. Now, I'm sure many of you know this ADHD research guru legend, Dr. Russell Barkley. He talks about the point of performance is that place and time in the natural setting of a person's life where they are failing to use what they know. They're failing to engage effectively in EF, or self-regulation, right? And the reason I share this is people ask me, is there a curriculum that teaches executive function? Or like, what are the activities I should do to teach executive function? And while there are some helpful activities, the real approach that I think truly addresses the need is we have to help students, 1, be self-aware when they're struggling. And then 2, they have to learn how to apply the tools at those moments, because anybody can fill out a planner when there's no stress and there's nothing to plan. But when you're overwhelmed and you need to map it out, that's when a planner is really useful, right? I mean, it's useful all the time. I think everybody should use a planner every day. But basically, it's really, really useful, these skills, when students are overwhelmed at the point of performance. And so if we understand this, then we can understand the power of teacher estimates of achievement. Now, the definition in research about this factor, teacher estimates of achievement, is teacher judgments that set expectations, are involved in setting the next challenges, identify those who may have early signs of difficulties, and observe how the students react to increased challenges in assignments and tests. Do we have any teachers here? Does this sound familiar? This is like what all teachers do on an everyday basis. And I would go further to say this is probably what any parents here have been doing with your kids, right? You observe how your child reacts. You try to respond appropriately. Yeah, sometimes we screw up. We might be a little, nitpicky or maybe nag a little bit. But for the most part, parents really understand their kids and know how to give them the next challenge that's appropriate, right? They've learned. So what I want you to do, if you're working with a student or your child, is try to understand where they are in this cycle. Right? Where are they struggling? And then provide support at the point of performance. Right? So what is it that they're struggling? If you're upset that they have too many missing assignments, okay, instead of saying get your missing assignments done, what support do they need in that moment? Do they need help writing all those assignments down, identifying which one has the greatest point value and which class has the lowest grade so they can start on that one? Maybe. Now, when you're coming up with what you're going to help your child with, place it in their zone of proximal development. I know this is a fancy education word, but basically it just means this. What is it that they cannot do alone that they'll need assistance on? And a lot of kids, because they've not been explicitly taught executive function skills, right? They don't know how to effectively use a calendar or a planner or email their teachers. So we have to figure out a way to teach them this. Okay. So now we're going to jump into some practical strategies that you can use to teach these things. So first off, if they're in this C committed phase, is anyone's kid feel they got this, it's going to be the best semester yet right now? This is when they're receptive to support, right? Hopefully. And so this is a great time to intervene because it's not the Hail Mary pass at the end of the semester. And so this is a strategy I recommend teaching when the students are not in major struggle, which is called managing your bosses. Okay. And the idea here is that students engage their teachers before corrective feedback is given. All right, so an example of this could be done right now. It's the beginning of a new school semester for many students. Hi, teacher. Hope you had a great winter break. Change it up. My goal for this semester is to earn a blank in your class. I plan to do the following, right? So this is where they executively decide. You give them the template, you make it easy, but they just fill it in. What grade do you want to earn? Sarah, Jimmy, what do you want to earn? I want to earn an A, a B. Okay, put it in there, right? What are you going to do to earn that? Well, I could sit in front of the classroom. I could check Canvas each day, put whatever they think. And then they can say, could you share any other suggestions on how I can reach my goal? Thank you for your guidance. Now, this is part of my PING methodology I came up with. PING stands for a lot of kids, especially students who have not been taught how to write emails, they need a formal structure for communicating, right? So PING stands for pleasant introduction, inform or inquire the teacher about what you need, negotiate a plan, and G, end with gratitude, right? And this framework can be really helpful for kids who don't feel like they know how to effectively communicate with teachers. Now, if you are interested in going deeper on this, if you go into the handout and you go onto, this is the committed, so I broke it down by stage. You can go into this document and you can click on this, my goal for this semester, and it'll take you to that template, right? So it's all there for you. If you have other issues, like your students are struggling with, they don't know how to ask for feedback, there's a template there. And I'm gonna say right now, I made these before ChatGPT. These are like human made. I just want to say that. I was doing this back in 2020 before I knew what ChatGPT was, at least. So these are like written by a human. Okay, so as I was sharing, those are there for you. You don't have to write them all down. Now, the other thing about this is throughout the semester, it's not enough just to write one email at the beginning and hope things work. The other reason I teach you to write emails or teach students to is because as parents and educators, we can't control what they do in the classroom, right? But we can sit with them or say, show me the email you sent, right? This is called proofability. We can request proofability for these, but we can't, if they say, I talked to my teacher, we have no way of knowing that. So this is a way to kind of track that. Okay, now throughout the semester, the student could send things like this. Hi, teacher, I've completed a draft of blank and I'm attaching to this email. Could you provide me with any suggestions on how to earn a blank on this assignment? Right? If they want an A, they can turn it in and ask for that feedback. Also, if the teacher doesn't give it, there is a record that they attempted. Is there anything else you suggest I do to stay on track to earn a blank in your class? Thank you for your guidance. Now, I want you to drop in the chat box, if a student is engaging their teachers like this throughout the semester, what type of grade do you think they're going to earn? Let me see. It's definitely not going to be an F, and a D- is passing. But yes, it's more likely to be a B or an A, right? Like the teacher will tell them exactly what they need. So a couple thoughts here. Managing your bosses. Students seek feedback proactively. They can share a proposal rather than expecting the teacher to tell them what to do. And they set up templates for frequently shared emails. Now, I didn't even go into that, but I do want to share this with people because it's also useful just for adults, which is templates. So let's see here if I have a breakdown. At the bottom of this, no, it's not on there. Okay, going back over here to this document. This video will walk you through how to set up templates.
Using ChatGPT like Google feels useless.
Sorry, let me just jump over to this real quick. So on here, there's something that a lot of people don't know about, but you can actually set up templates on Gmail. So you can go into the settings and turn on this little thing, and then you can open up templates, right? So they can save these and just reuse them for the teacher. Because students ask me, oh man, that took a while to send that one email. Well, they can actually just save it and then just put the different teacher's name or assignments in for the different templates. So that's a great way to help them save time and make them appreciate your expertise. Okay, I hope you got something helpful there. Let's jump into what do you do when hurdles emerge? So this is where there's probably multiple missing assignments. They're starting to feel stressed, right? So my key strategy, because I've worked with students from the beginning of the semester to students who just started in the last, 20 days of the semester or so. And so the tool that I find to be really helpful is what I call the student dashboard. Okay, so in this part, I'm going to show you how to create a student dashboard and then how to help them figure out what to do. Now, it's important to note here that there's a difference between a learning management system and a student information system. And a lot of students get overwhelmed because they don't know the difference, right? So student information systems are things like Aries, Infinite Campus, PowerSchool. This is where the final grades are put, but it's not where all the assignments are put, right? Then there's the learning management system. This is like Google Classroom, Canvas, Schoology. I know a lot of districts are using Canvas these days or Google Classroom. So this is where the teachers actually put the assignments, the rubrics, the students can communicate with them about the assignments. And one thing I suggest is that if a student is working in a school system where maybe they have to log into Canvas to find some assignments, and then maybe one teacher is working on Google Classroom, another teacher just posts stuff on their website they built, right? They're going to feel absolutely overwhelmed. Is anyone working with a student who's trying to track their assignments across multiple portals? Seeing some hands up, some head nods. So this is why I recommend having something like a student dashboard. The goal of the student dashboard is to help them track things in one place. Now, for some students, it might not be ideal to copy things from multiple portals. I can see how that might be overwhelming, but sometimes it's just like there's not an option, right? You have to figure out what you need to do, and you can't just hold it all in your head. So you have to find some way to look at everything and then prioritize what the top priority is. The reason I like doing it digitally is because you don't have to like rewrite the assignments every time, right? You can just delete, copy and paste, move them down. The other thing I've added to this that I think is really helpful for students with ADHD is this column, has this been submitted to the teacher? Have you ever had a student who did all the work and then just forgot to turn it in? So this takes off that, this is like a cue. Now, one of my favorite quotes recently in education is by Tara Sumter. She says, students with executive function challenges don't have a problem with the doing, it's the cueing. They forget to get cued, right? So this serves as a cue to remind them to submit it. So it's not the doing, it's the cueing, right? So that's something to think about. So if you want to try using this in the handout that I dropped in the chat, in the hurdles of merge section, you can make a copy of this student dashboard, and then you can use questions from this document to help them prioritize and task initiate on key assignments. And actually, let me show you what that is, because I think it's a pretty neat document, if I don't say so myself. Let's see here. Let me jump over here. So this document, so I made this document called Powerful Questions for a Coaching Session with a Student. So basically, if you had 45 minutes to sit with a student, you could use this. I came up with this framework I call PEMDAS, which is the order of operations for coaching a student. But start by prioritizing secure connection, right? So like, hey, is there anything on your mind before we get started? And then you move into SMART goals, right? So you might say like, hey, I noticed that this assignment is missing. Are you open to working on that? Right? So these are kind of questions that can help you start the conversation with a student who might be hesitant or not even know what they're supposed to do. People ask me, how do I run a coaching session? This is how I'd approach it. If you're wondering like for more information on how to do this, I've also broken down some FAQs that I get about these from people I teach how to run coaching sessions. So there's some stuff there if you want to dig into that a little further. Back to the slides. Now, the other thing that happens when you help students identify their assignments and put it in a student dashboard is you're cultivating a key executive function skill. So I came up with this acronym to teach parents who are like, what are executive function skills? I came up with this acronym called POSITIVE. It starts for planning, organization. The S is self-awareness. I is initiation. T is time management. I is inhibition. The V is visualizing outcomes, and the E is evaluating priorities. And I think that's all in that document too, if you want to use that. But this helps them develop self-awareness. One of the biggest challenges for students is they just don't even know what they're supposed to be doing. They've just given up on looking at it, or they're just overwhelmed. So once you've helped them map out what's due, then you can use this powerful question to help them prioritize. So remember, on that student dashboard, there was a column. Let me jump back over. There's a column right here that said point value, right? So they should be putting in the point value. And so on here, then you can ask them, okay, now that you know your grades, what assignment has the greatest point value in the class with the lowest grade, right? This is not a perfect system. There are weighted grades and priorities that come up sometimes. But in general, most kids don't know how to prioritize, just like most kids don't know what it means to self-reflect. So this gives them a simple framework for knowing how to prioritize. And then lastly, once they know what they want to prioritize, teach them to confirm their plan with their teacher, right? So that would look like this. Hey teacher, hope you're doing well. I noticed my grade in your class is currently a D, B, C, whatever it is. My goal is to earn a A. They've just got to keep repeating it. Like it sounds repetitive, but the more they say it, the more the teacher will prompt them and cue them to do the thing that they said they want to do, right? So it's kind of enrolling the teacher in the plan. Here's my plan to complete the following assignments. Is there anything else I can do to work toward my goal of earning a A in your class? And lastly, negotiate. This is the end ping. Will I be able to earn full credit if I complete these and submit them to you by they choose a date, right? I always tell students, because they're like, yeah, I'll do it by tomorrow. And no, make it like 2 weeks from now. Overestimate how much time you're going to need. So important to encourage them, because time blindness is a real thing. Thank you for your guidance. Okay. So this is something they would save as a template. And before they start to work on stuff, because if they try, what happens is if a student starts to work on something that you tell them to do, and then the teacher's like, you can't get credit for this. This was due 2 weeks ago. Then they're going to come back to you and be like, I don't trust you. I'm not getting your help anymore. I mean, that's been my experience, is that you really want to make sure the teacher is bought in too, and it demonstrates they're advocating for themselves. And they might even have extended time or something like that. Now, to make this super simple on students, have them add their teacher's email to their student dashboard. So this is one of the tabs on the student dashboard. And just to make it super easy for people, let me show you what I mean here. So if you go over to the handout and you go to the, let's see here, student dashboard, pop this open. Please do click File, Make a Copy if you want to use this for yourself. This is I say small tweaks have big peaks. Just put your teacher's emails in, and their email, you can literally click on it and send an email. But most kids will spend 20 minutes trying to find their teacher's email on the school website, get lost, give up, go play video games. Just make it really easy. Just start the semester with having all this locked into one place. The other thing is, if you make a copy of this, I encourage them to put their logins for their usernames and their portals, basically, to make it easy. It's not like the most full safe, like Fort Knox level password protection here, but it does make it easier. But also I've included the email templates here. So if it makes it easier on them, they're all right there, right? So they can just copy those over. Okay. How are we doing? Are y'all hanging with me? Should I slow down a little bit? Am I talking too fast? I don't want to overwhelm people, but I do want to give you lots of value per minute. Okay, I'm seeing some head nods. We'll keep going here. Okay, so let's see here. Yeah, I already shared. Add those logins. It makes it easier. So that's the big picture. Creating that student dashboard. It's like saves a lot of time if you get it done. So the last part about this is coordinating support for students who maybe they need more than just organization tips and systems. Sometimes it needs to be a team approach. And that's where that collective efficacy piece comes in. So I was sharing with you the research from Dr. John Hattie earlier, and collective efficacy was like the second highest impact factor. So in that alert phase, if you have a student in there, You might have a student who's just checked out, right? They might say, I'm all done with my homework, even when you know they're missing assignments, right? You might have a student, you might ask, hey, how are you going to raise your low grade? And they respond with something like, oh, that's not going to happen. The teacher doesn't like me. Has anyone heard this from a student before? Like, a teacher doesn't like me, that's why I'm not going to do this. Maybe they agree to do things when you talk to them, but then they don't follow through. Maybe you've tried pulling, begging, but you're still feeling stuck. So as I was sharing earlier, I used to work at this counseling enriched classroom back in the day. And the thing that I found worked most effectively was the family team meeting. So I'm going to walk you through how to run that, because this is the thing that the kids who were like leaving class and going to smoke pot and just totally disengaging, when we implemented this process, it was able to pull them back in, right? And so here's the process for the family team meeting. Okay. So first, the definition. The family team meeting is defined as a structured decision-making meeting led by a trained facilitator that guides a student support team to use their collective wisdom and skills to support a student in reaching an agreed upon goal. Now, going back to that research by John Hattie, this is one of the second highest impact factors on all things, right? And if you look at this diagram, the 0.4 is that hinge point, right? The average impact size of the factor. So in theory, because this 0.4 is multiplied by 1, 2, 3, 4, in theory, this approach has the possibility of accelerating learning by 4 school years, according to kind of the way people interpret this diagram. Now, collective efficacy is a team's shared belief that through collective action, they can positively influence student outcomes, even those who are disengaged or disadvantaged, right? And here's the agenda. Very simple. What's going well? What's not going well? Who's doing what by when? And when's our next meeting? Okay. So here's how you do this. During the what's going well, if you're running this as a parent or as a coach, as an educator, you require everybody to share out something positive. No one can say something negative during this part. The reason for this, if anyone's familiar with the research of Dr. Stephen Krashen, he talked about lowering the affective filter, right? If you start with what's not going well, the student's affective filter, their anxiety skyrockets and they are disengaged from the jump, right? So we share out, and it can be even something small, right? I'm proud you've been going to your coaching sessions, or I'm proud you took out the garbage when we asked last week. Nothing is too small. If you don't have anything to say, I'm glad you at this meeting right now and we're working together, right? But if you are facilitating this, just make sure everybody shares something positive. They need to hear it. Then you go into what needs to change, right? If we could do one thing by our next family team meeting, what would be different? Typically, these are held 1 month spaced out. Then you turn to the student and you say, does this feel realistic to you, right? The parents might say, I want them to finish all their missing assignments. And maybe they have 30 missing assignments, right? You turn to the kid, say, well, does that feel realistic? Well, I think I can do half, 15. Okay, can we all get on board with aiming for 15 in the next 30 days, right? And if we do more, great. So it's a way to basically align the team. Now, a couple of tips. Make sure that when you are working as a team, you set specific goals, right? Hey, by next family team meeting, we're going to get that history final project turned in, right? But we do not want to vent here. Why can't you just do this like your twin brother? All right, we don't want to say something like that. That's gonna throw them off. It's gonna help them disengage. And then lastly, this is where you actually build in that collective efficacy, right? So you encourage everybody to take some role in the plan. So going back to that, the plan was to turn in the history assignment. Maybe one of the parents body doubles each weeknight. Maybe the history teacher allows the student to do a modified version, or whatever is most appropriate for the student, right? And lastly, always schedule these meetings before you leave. Because if you are working with the school team or a coach or a therapist or whoever it is, so much easier to schedule it when you do it in the moment rather than trying to jump back into email. So I'm going to give you a quick example of what this might look like. Hey, we're all on the same page that Eric is going to have his final history project turned in before our meeting next month. Mom, you said you're going to buy a handheld recorder so he can interview his grandparents. Can you still do that? Mom's like, yep. Dad, you said you're going to act as a body double and sit with him after dinner 1 hour each weeknight to be a support. Are you still on board with that? Yes. Eric, you said you're going to put your phone in your parents' room until you've completed your homework, at which point you're going to text a picture of what you have completed to mom, dad, and myself each school night. What time should we expect that by, right? Is everybody on board with this plan? Now, this may shift depending on what your scenario is. Maybe it's just 2 parents working with a kid, or 1 parent and a teacher, right? But I have included a meeting notes template with these prompts for this exact type of meeting. because I always tell people it's not about a coach, it's about the team approach, right? Everybody, if they're on board together, it's going to make a big impact because everybody's going to feel responsible. So that's how you deal with that alert phase. Now, let's say you're like right near the end of the semester and you're in that scramble phase. And maybe the student has dozens of missing assignments, D's, grades in the D's or F range, right? Realistically, they may not pass every class, right? So here's where I recommend this. Go to the teacher directly and ask for guidance. Because some teachers would be like, look, I see you trying. We're going to give you a chance here. Here's what you got to do. And they'll tell you exactly what you can. And so this is a technique I call save what you can, right? And the email template for this is, hey, I hope you're doing well. I'm seeking to earn, maybe it's just a passing grade in your class, and I would like your advice. I think I should do the following. They propose something. Because sometimes the teacher will be like, yeah, you can do that. You'll get a D minus or whatever. You'll get a D. I'm not advocating for D minuses here. I'm just saying sometimes getting the full credit is the most important piece. Can you provide me with feedback on this plan? Do you have another approach you suggest I should take? Thank you for your guidance, right? So sometimes we have to just be realistic about what we're facing and start prepping for the next semester and try to do the best we can. Now, if you are in that exhaustion phase where your kid is just 1,000% checked out and they can't do anything, they cannot engage, maybe they're really not, just can't even check into their assignments, what I suggest you do is going into what I call back to the drawing board. So if you have been taking some of these steps and helping them reach out to their teachers, right? This may require you requesting an IEP or an ISP if you're at private school, working with a specialist or making a plan before the next semester, revising the 504 plan to incorporate new accommodations, right? Ideally, you've tried some of this. Your student has emailed teachers repeatedly in the past semester, and you have documentation of their attempts to address their learning challenges, right? So important to document these things if you are a parent trying to work with the school system. But hopefully this gives you something to work with, whatever phase of CHASE your child is in. Hopefully you've got something you can take away from this. So as I shared, that document is in the chat box. And in order for us just to wrap up, I'd love for you to drop in the chat box, like what's something you're taking from this, right? What is something valuable? Drop it in the chat box. Kind of summarize your knowledge if you can. I'd really appreciate that. And then I'm gonna adjust here to jump into answering any questions if anything has come up.
We were all trying to decide what positive stands for. If you could say that again.
Okay, I can do it off the top of my head. I'm planning, organization. The S is like self-awareness, but it could also be self-direction. Self-awareness, initiation of tasks. T is time management. The other I is inhibition. V is visualizing outcomes, and E is evaluating priorities. But I want to make it easy on you so you don't have to remember that. So let me see here if I have it. Is it on there? I don't know if it is on there. Okay, I'm gonna have to add it. I know I have it. So if you're ever wondering about something I shared and you want to find it quickly, the best way to do it is if you go to efspecialist.com and you go to this article section and you type in like positive, for example, like all of this is searchable and it should just pop up. See, no, that's not so great. Okay, I'm gonna find a way to drop it in there because I have it listed as an acronym, like an acronym index. I'll put it on this document.
It's fabulous. I tried to do that actually. I went to your site and I copied, but then I realized it doesn't have all the things that I copied, all the letters. So
yeah, that one. Okay, that one is a little more hidden. Yeah. I will drop it in before the end of the night. So it'll be on that as long as people save that document and actually let me share that with you in case anyone wants to save it to your own drive. If you click on it and you click file, like either make a copy or you can just click that little like add to my drive thing. If you don't have a drive, you can just download it as a PDF or Microsoft Word. Yeah.
That was awesome. I see people are taking away a lot too. There's an appropriate strategy no matter where you're at. Some family meetings, somebody appreciated that. Organization of the process, the dashboard. I think the dashboard's awesome.
Good.
Yeah, lots of takeaways here.
Yeah, and also I know people need their weeknights too. So if there are no questions, we can also end a few minutes earlier, but I'm happy to stick around if there's anything I can be helpful with.
This was such a wealth of information. And are you okay that I share the recording, your slides, the handout?
Yeah.
Do you have limit?
Yeah, I'm totally okay with that. And I have, for anyone who's enjoyed this talk and you're like, oh, I want more stuff like this, probably one of the best places to check it out would be under coaching. I have this speaking page, which doesn't fully make sense, but if you scroll down, I've given a variety of presentations. And so, for example, like you can click on, this is one I did for UCSF last year and a half ago. So this is like a different one. But yeah, I was talking about that research by Dr. Adele Diamond. Like, so there's different presentations on here too, if anyone wants to dig in further or found it helpful and wants to check it out. I'll drop that page into the chat box.
So helpful, so many resources. I'm like emailing them to all my different personal email addresses for our own personal family use. That dashboard, I really can see us using it as a family as well to like guide those conversations because we have a tween and a teen.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that we're all have ADHD, so trying to find a teacher email, even for the parents, can be difficult sometimes.
The small stuff can be really helpful. The little things that we overlook that seem easy for a neurotypical person. I see there's a question here on what do you do if a student is in burnout and a teacher still insists on the student completing all assignments? Yeah. Okay. So if I was, I think the answer might change depending on where we are in the semester. It also might change depending on if the student has an IEP or 504. So, and also what my role is. But if I was coaching the student, I would say, okay, like, let's try to negotiate a plan, and say like, it's not possible, given I have 5 other classes, but here's what I can do. Could this earn me a passing grade or blank, right? So I would try to start a dialogue. If the teacher was being super rigid, I would probably, I would have the student forward the email series to their parents so the parents could help advocate. Or if there's like a trusted counselor in the school that could help, sometimes people will be more flexible. I think it's important to be proactive and not just wait till the end of the semester, because once the grades are put in, it becomes much more difficult to remediate. So I would start to try to help them to negotiate a plan. If the teacher's like 100% no, I would either have the student, if there's no way they're going to pass it, I wouldn't have them invest energy in that. And I would triage and evaluate how are they doing in their other classes. Is this worth investing energy if the teacher is completely inflexible and there's no chance of them passing? So it's kind of a complex answer, but I guess that's like anytime I try to like studying executive function so much, I always try to go back to like, what's the end goal? Okay, I want to graduate high school or whatever. Okay, if that's my goal, what do I need to do in this semester? Well, I need to pass these classes. Oh, I can't pass that class? Okay, let's move on to the next thing. And so it's kind of just like keeping that end goal in mind and then evaluating like, is this a worthy use of my time and energy investment, or am I literally running into a wall here and I would be harming myself, to some degree if I just keep trying to force this teacher to engage if they're not engaged. Yeah. Does that help at all? Cowley asked, my son, I see a thumbs up. Cool. Callie asked, my son loses paper assignments and pencils frequently. He crams all paper into backpack. Any tips on how to get him more organized? We have tried different folders. He just still crams them into a backpack. Yeah, this is a tough one. I mean, I don't know how old he is. And so I have this article like on a method that I created, which you could try. So if you go to articles, and actually this is if you go into this article section, there's different sections on different things. So I think that one, how to help students with ADHD keep their backpack clean. So you could try this. So this might be helpful. I'm going to drop this in the chat box, but I kind of like I do, you do, then we try to do it independently. So it's like first model for him. Or one thing that I found helpful is like you have them verbally tell you what to do and you do it. So it's like, okay, let's pull this out. Where does it go? He's telling you where things go. And so he's not like both physically and intellectually doing it at the same time, but it's like you're showing that you really care. You're also challenging him to cognitively think about like what would be the process. So that would be probably one step I would try. I think also it's like this is going to be something that you're not going to do at once. It's going to have to be built into a routine that's part of the after school plan, if this is a priority. Because yeah, it's terrible. I mean, my daughter does the same thing. She's 6, but she's just shoving things into her backpack. And so we're working on it too. I recently set up like a sticker reinforcement chart, and that might not be the best fit for a 14-year-old. But if there is some way to reinforce it, or potentially be like, after you do this, you can get YouTube, or you can get, like, if they do something, you can get 10 minutes of this. So if there is something where they're motivated to do it and they'll be willing to do it, that's how I would probably try to start building out like a routine where it's like something that happens frequently. Does anything come to mind, Cowley, when you think about like something that your child might be motivated to earn or receive based on engaging in this desired behavior? Game time. Okay, yeah. And you could just limit it, right? It doesn't have to be like an hour of game time. It could be shorter period. Yeah, I mean, that's true, Kristen. It's so true. Like, so many kids just like having a check next to their name. Like, even adults like this stuff. We can't even lie. You know, we like it's like, so we don't really outgrow praise. I would just encourage people to praise the process, right? The process, not the person. Praise the process to focus on developing that growth mindset. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I see, Laura, you asked, how do you help a kid take a first step in acknowledging that they have ADHD, experiencing CHASE? So, well, as a first step with ADHD, I think an assessment would be really helpful. Or like, yeah, so I don't know if it sounds like this might be an undiagnosed. They have been assessed. Okay, so so it sounds like they know they have ADHD, but they just don't, like, sounds like they know they have ADHD, but they're not like embodying like, okay, this is part of my brain style and my needs. And so I think this is where that strategy of self-reported grading comes in, where it's like, how do you help them think about what are the strengths, what are the challenges? And so this is where reflexive questioning can be really useful. So things like, you know, now that you've been assessed, and ideally the person who did the assessment did some type of debrief with them to help them understand it. But like, you know, if they are experiencing CHASE, so maybe they are missing assignments, be like, why do you think that is? Right? Like, what do you think causes you to miss assignments? How do you think having ADHD is connected to that? They may not know a lot about ADHD. They may not know about working memory and how it's easy to forget things when you have, you know, working memory deficits and things like that. But I think if you can make it part of a conversation where you're asking questions, where you're doing research, where you're like maybe bringing them into the conversation. I mean, sometimes also like having someone who's knowledgeable about it besides the parent interact with them can be really helpful. So maybe it's like an older peer who's accepted their ADHD diagnosis, or a support group for teens, or there's a lot of like really cool ADHD influencers out there. So if you can find someone who's like, you know, has kind of stuff that's scientifically based, and you can be like, have you ever seen this video? Like, find something that's relevant and related, that could also be helpful. But yeah, you want to be careful with that social media stuff too, because there's a lot of crap on there that is not helpful. But there are some really, I mean, one of the best people is Jessica McCabe. You know, she's like so deep in the research, but also makes it fun and interesting. So I might check her stuff out.
Thank you so much, Sean. This is so helpful. And just even listening to you answer the questions gives me, I think, all of us something to take away, with whether we're working with our own kids, or maybe we're in the education system, or coaches, therapists, whatever. This has just been invaluable, and really appreciate all the resources you're willing to share with us too, that you've developed and are using. Kristen, do we have any more announcements? Our next meeting is coming up. I was thinking to make sure to advertise that.
Yeah, our next one is Dr. Natasha Burgert, who's going to talk about Worried and Wiggly, kids with
Yes.
anxiety and ADHD. I haven't ever heard her speak other than when we did the podcast with her, but I have read a lot of her blogs. She is hilarious and fun while she's still getting a point across. So I think that'll be a really good talk. And I was putting in the chat, the teen group. We talk about a lot of executive functioning things for them. And if they're younger, then sometimes parents will join with them, especially the first time or two, to make it a little easier on them. Most of them tend to be middle schoolers, but middle and high school kids can come.
And that meets monthly?
That one is the first Tuesday of the month, whereas this one is generally the second Tuesday of the month. So the next one for the teen group is February 3rd, and the next one here is February 10th.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you so much. This was
Yes.
huge, and so much more than was just said, because the document is going to take hours to go through.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it's not too overwhelming. And yeah, you can always reach out if you have any questions or need direct guidance. Thank you everyone for giving me the opportunity to share with your group. Thank you, Sarah and Kristen. I really appreciate it, and hope to see you all in the future.
Okay. Thank you so much. Have a good evening, everyone. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.